you weren't always an athlete. So at what point did?
Well, I was always an athlete, but I was never like going saying I'm gonna be an athlete, like or I want to play basketball or I'm doing this. You know what I mean? When I was running around the neighborhood just kind of bananas, and I said I was at my grandma's house a lot when my parents were at work, and there was a guy named Mr. Carr. He had a son. They lived on the corner, and his son Austin Carr. Actually, he's got a son that's at North Odom now, Rico. His dad was the first one to acknowledge and was like, "Man, I need to get you playing in some organized sports." So I was probably about like 10 years old.
Okay.
And he took me down to Southwick, and that was the first organized football team that I played on. Was down at Southwick Community Center for the Chiefs. So shout out to Mr. Carr, rest in peace.
Okay. So when did you get to the point where you saw basketball as a chance to, make something of yourself? When did you get serious about basketball? What grade, what school, and what was like the light switch that flipped?
Well, I was always, because I like to play. Like I said, I had older brothers, so I would still go play and just compete, but I was still just running the streets. I wasn't really trying to do that. So it never really clicked for me, but I still played. Like, even like coming up, I was about 12 years old, 13 years old, I really started going to the Boys and Girls Club. Okay. Because I was trying to find a way to really get away from the streets, from all the gang stuff. And, when I say that, I'm from, and I'm not proud of it now, but, my truth is my truth. And that's what my story is. And I use my story to try to tell kids what not to do, and look at me now and say, I'm far from perfect, but this is where I came from. So, I'm the guy that was robbing people from the bus stop with the 22 longs. They looked like 357 Magnums, and we would just sit at 19th Street and around the First, wait for the bus to drop somebody off. Boom, let them walk up the street, and boom, that's how we was gonna go and get it. So, but then I was still going, I would play, and then some of the older people recognized that I was good. So when I got to the Boys and Girls Club, there was a coach by the name of Pooh Bell, a little midget. He's still actually out at Mid-America right now, runs stuff out at Mid-America. He really started picking me up and taking me to certain places to play, and then I got involved down at Southwick Community Center. So I started playing basketball down there at 13 years old. So I would say like 13 was the age that I was almost starting to try to transition out, trying to get some sense, right. But I was still in the environmental school. I was at Waller Environmental School at the time. And, so I was still trying to get some sense, about 13. And then my 10th grade year of high school is when it really clicked.
Yeah, you talk about not being proud of it, but the reality is we see the news now, and we know that this stuff is still going on in Louisville. So we can ignore it and try to act like well, he really shouldn't say that, or he shouldn't blah blah blah. But your story is the type story that can help other people turn their life around, because you could come in holier than thou and try to talk to students and try to get them on the right track. But unless they know that you come from where they come from and have some of the same experiences that they have, you're the type of person that they'll listen to, because you've been where they've been before. All right, so growing up, you talked about outside of school. Did you value academics at all?
No, okay. No, I didn't even, and I say it all the time. If it wasn't for really getting involved in athletics, and not just getting involved, but finding the right coach that understood how to grab my attention and get me to understand that you can lead in a positive way, and these people are going to follow you in this way if you do this. Right. So I didn't value academics. I was what they call an ECE student, so I was in BD classes. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to put me in, they were doing all these tests on me and stuff, and my dad would say, he's very intelligent, you all, your classes are just too slow for him. Okay. And so he's bored. So, he's bored with what you're teaching. And so I always tested high. So they put me in BD classes. So I was in ECE classes all the way up to 10th grade. And when I think about it now, it doesn't help kids, because all you do is alienate them, and then get them to know like you're not normal. Right. And you know, when I think about it now, you had us out in the portables. We weren't even allowed to be in the school with the kids. You had us, we couldn't eat lunch with the kids. So really it was prison. So it was truly like a pipeline to prison, you know, and that's what the alternative schools I went to were. It was really like, I feel like grooming, you know, us for prison, right, and grooming me for prison. So I didn't really value academics.
And it's so funny because when I was in second grade, I would talk a lot in class, and my teacher, she didn't choose to write me up. She said, he's bored in my class, he needs to be challenged more. And she got me tested for, now it's called Gifted and Talented, but where I'm from, it was called Program for Academically Superior Students. But she could have easily just said, he's a bad student, and yep, decide to write me up. But yep, instead, she thought outside the box, got me tested for being an exceptional
for your
student,
gift,
right, for my gift. And then I was able to go into the Gifted and Talented classes, and you know, I didn't value it the way I should have, but it's just amazing that my life could have went down a totally different path if she had have just said, he's this bad kid, and I'm not gonna put up with it.
And then you've got that label on
right,
you, and then that label follows you for the rest of your life.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what you do.
Right. And
that's what they do with us in the system now. They get us in the system, and then they track us, and they want it to follow us for the rest of our lives. Right. And that's what they do. And that's how we get caught up in the system. And we've been placed in the system from the time we were kids. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it start with all of the different testings and you know, and that's a whole different story, but that's just what it is.
So you did get to the point where you got to go to college. So talk about that transition from Victory Park, West End, Louisville. You didn't mention what high school you attended, but I don't know if it was predominantly black, predominantly white, but just that culture shock from going from Louisville to college. What was that first year like for you? Where did you go to school, and what was it like transitioning from this comfort zone of Louisville to wherever you went?
Well, it was, you know, just real quick, just for the record, and I said I was an ECE student. So in the 7th grade, I went to Waller Environmental School. So a lot of you all are educators, so you know what Waller Environmental School is. When I left Waller, I went to Iroquois for 2 weeks. Went to Iroquois for 2 weeks, ended up getting sent to Seneca because the coaches and people found out that this tremendous athlete that was really good was from this neighborhood, but he was going to Iroquois, which was where my brothers went because it was from my grandmother's address. So they sent me back to Seneca. I made the team, made the varsity team, was one of 2 freshmen that made the varsity team. Day of the game, they tell me that I'm ineligible and I can't play because I had transferred and went to another school for 2 weeks. So I had to sit out for 36 weeks. Wow. That was terrible. So it didn't help me as a kid. It actually stirred me back down the wrong path. Mm-hmm. So I ended up getting sent to Butual. Went to Butual as a 9th grader. Butual, Maurice Reisner, shout out to Maurice Reisner and Bob Redmond and Steve Dashner, who was the superintendent at the time. They got together and sent me from Butual to Wagner to Bob Redmond, who was a coach that they felt like could really handle a guy like me. Right. So Redmond is who, and Redmond from Wagner High School, football is kind of what got me on my path. So when going to college, when I finally got the chance to go to college, my senior year of high school, after being, you know, everything in track, football, setting state records in football, I still didn't have any scholarship offers. And I was still labeled as a bad kid because of what my background was, even though I was a completely different kid. So now coaches really didn't recruit me. So after my senior year, being the second leading scorer in the state behind Tick Rogers, and this is when DeJuan Wheat came out, Derek Anderson, all of these guys, there was an all-star game at Central High School. And I said, I'm gonna win the MVP, I'm gonna win everything. Dunk contest, 3-point contest. Everybody was in the game, every top player in the city. Well, I won the dunk contest, I've lost in the finals of the 3-point contest, and my team won the game, and I won the MVP. That very next day, Eastern Kentucky, John Ferguson, called me on the phone and offered me a scholarship. So I went my first year, paid for it, Pell Grant, I bet on myself. I bet on myself and paid for it, made the grades, did what I was supposed to do. That second year I was scholarship. Huge transition going from where I came from into, college and being a college athlete.